This video is a collaboration with Programming Knowledge. Welcome to the third video of the playlist understanding how JUnit works with Spring Boot and writing some unit tests for our Spring Boot REST API application. So in the previous videos, we talked about what we are going to build, which is going to be a REST API, and then we are going to write unit tests for that REST API. We will also be talking about the TDD approach, the test-driven development approach, where we first write our tests and then we build our API based on those tests. So we will be doing that for one of the methods of our REST API or one of our APIs. And in this video, we will actually build our REST API so that we can, once it's ready, we can start writing the unit tests for it. So just a quick recap of what we had done in the previous videos. So we had talked about very simple examples of JUnit, how JUnit works. We also had this calculator class, which we talked about, where we had simple methods, multiply, divide. We had also made a simple calculated test class, and we talked about the guidelines for writing good tests. So it should end with a test name, and how we can actually assert that the output which we are expecting from that method is what we actually get. So this is how we talked about JUnit, how it works. We talked about assert equals. We also talked about what happens when a test is not passed. So here you cannot divide by 0, so it throws an exception. But when you run this, and if you had not tested your code, you would not know that 4 divided by 0 could give you an exception. So you write a test to check what happens when you divide 4 by 0. And we run the application or run the tests, and then we find out that the test has failed, and we also get the reason why it has failed. So in these ways, tests are very handy for your application to make sure that you don't leave out any test cases or edge cases for your application where it can break or cause some complications in your code. Okay, now let's go ahead and create our domain and persistence layers for our REST API application, and then we can start writing unit tests for them. So in this video, let's start. Now we can remove calculator for now, or let's just remove it because it was an example. We can also remove the calculated test class because we don't need it now. We understand how JUnit works normally. The next thing that we are going to add is a domain layer. So basically an entity which we will be using throughout our videos, and which we'll be using for our REST API application. So somewhere where we can store our data in a class, right? So let's make a library, a library or a book management system. So we'll have a book class, and here we will be adding everything. So now we need to add some entities for our book record. So we will be using some annotations such as entity, the table annotation, to make sure that the class is pointing to the right table. Aside from these two annotations, we will be including Lombok utility annotation. So data, all args, constructor, and builder. So we won't be needing to declare any getters and setter and constructors, as Lombok already does that for you. The string and integer fields are annotated with non-null to prevent them from having a null or an empty value for validation purposes. So let's quickly implement this and see how this looks like. So what we do is first have annotations here. So we have entity. Next we have table. And let's give the table a name. So name book record. The next thing that we need is data. Next is our constructor and all our constructor. And the last thing that we need is builder. Okay, so now we have our annotations ready. Let's start with what the book will have. So each book will have a unique ID. So we have the ID Next thing that it will have is generated value, and the strategy is going to be generation type auto. The next thing that it will have is a private long book ID. The next thing that the book will have is a name, so non null, and private string name of the book. The next thing which we want is private string, a summary of what the book is about, and lastly we need private int rating. So this will be out of 5. The rating will be out of 5, and we just have a few other things to note down, which is the book ID, name, summary, and rating. So this will be our record or a domain layer, which we can use to actually run our application and handle the book create, update, delete APIs for the book record. Now, we don't need to actually connect it to an external database because we are using Apache Derby, which is an in-memory database which is handled at runtime. So once we run our application, we don't have to worry about initializing anything. We can directly just start our CRUD applications, and Derby will handle the database uh, things for us. So now that we have our book record ready, the next thing that we need to do is have a book repository. So let's quickly see how we can work with that. So the next step is to create a JPA repository to provide methods to easily retrieve and manipulate book records in the database without the hassle of manual implementation, right? We don't want to, we are only looking to have some simple CRUD methods on top of our book, and we will be focusing more on the unit tests part for this. So for that, let's create a new class, not a class but an interface. So new class, and we'll just call it book repository, and this need not be a class. This can be an interface, and all it does is it extends JPA repository, and it has the book and the ID, which is along. And now with this we have our book repository ready, and we can actually do create, update, delete with our repository, and it will help us understand how all of this works. So now that we have our book and our repository ready, let's just see what we can, how we can work with it. So the next thing and the last thing that we need is our book controller class. So go inside this, go to new book controller, and this will handle all the APIs for our class. And let's just quickly annotate this with our endpoint. So REST controller. The next thing that we need is request mapping, and value is equal to /book. So all of the endpoints start with /book, and then we have our way in with it. So now we need to inject the book repository bean inside our controller so that we can do create, update, delete with it. We are not making a book service. We are just going with a book repository to handle our CRUD applications, because we want to focus more on the unit test side, which we'll come to in a bit. But for now, we'll just create a boilerplate CRUD application. So do an auto wired, and this will be book repository, and now with the help of this, we can actually start using our book repository and our book controller and start making all the changes that we need to. So for this video, this is all I have, a very quick implementation of the domain and persistence layers for our REST API application. We had created the book.java, which basically had all the fields and attributes for our book, which will include the book ID, name, summary, and rating. We also created a book repository which extends the JPA repository and gives us out of the box methods to use on top of our book data. And we will be using the book repository inside our book controller class using the auto wiring injection method, and then we can start creating our get, put, post, delete mappings and our endpoints, which can later help us writing unit tests. So here we will be only implementing put, post, and get for our methods. We will write tests for those methods, and then at a later stage we will be using TDD, test driven development, to actually implement the delete method. So before we actually write the logic for our delete method, we will be writing tests for our delete method, and then as we try to pass each test, we will see how we are developing that particular method using TDD, and we'll see how we'll compare how both the methods are and which one is suitable for you or which one your organization uses, and based on that you can worry about what to handle, what not to handle. So that's it for this video. We talked about the domain and persistence layers. In the next video, we will finish up our book API, and we will implement our endpoints, and then we can quickly jump ahead with the JUnit unit tests for our REST API application to make sure that these methods are actually running properly and they are passing all the tests that it needs to pass. For this tutorial, you will be having some homework as well. So once we have implemented the simple unit test, you will be getting some homework. So stay tuned for that as well. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.